In this video, I want to show you how to measure a brand's ROI. ROI means return on investment. So this is talking about whether it is corporate brand or personal brand. And you want to be able to measure what the return on investment, meaning that the amount of money that you spend on your brand, the efforts that you make on your brand, the financial implications of that, how can you measure it in terms of results, in terms of revenue, or in terms of growth for the business or for the company. Now, a lot of people believe that branding cannot be measured, and that's not true. Branding can actually be measured, and there's a definite way to measure branding. But the reason why a lot of people have had it twisted for a long time is because of people like to do things just for the flair of doing things, and they don't like accountability in things like that. So I want to show you how branding can be measured, and this will make a huge difference in your business or whatever it is that you are running with a brand. And let's get right into it. So there are three customer interaction phases. Now, this is very important because a lot of people do not realize that branding is not just one thing on its own that's a standalone. Branding is never a standalone. So for example, if you are investing in your brand as a standalone thing, there's something wrong, because there are other things that are connected to it, and there are other things that are connected to the business. And if you don't know how to properly segment, and if you don't know how to properly separate these three areas, these three phases, you would just be spending money without knowing what exactly your money is doing. And that is actually what makes branding very difficult to measure. So if you want to be able to measure your branding, you have to be able to know what exactly you are doing. And as you would see by the rest of this video, you would realize that a lot of people are doing something else and calling it marketing and calling it branding. And that's the reason why they have a lot of problems in their business, and that's why they have this notion that branding cannot be measured. But branding can actually be measured, and I will show you exactly how, the metrics to look for at the end of this video. The first phase, there are three phases, and the first phase is what I call priming. And priming is what a lot of businesses and a lot of brands do, and they call it branding. For example, the controversial Jaguar ad that came out in 2024 that caused a lot of outrage, they called it a rebranding campaign, but that's actually not a rebranding. That's not branding. That's actually a priming campaign. Now, it's priming done wrong, in my own opinion, but it is a priming. That's what you call a priming campaign. So if you have any of these campaigns that it's not, the goal is not to sell anything, there's no offer, there's no CTA, there's no, there's no opt-in or anything like that, it's just an awareness campaign. So for those kinds of things that you spend money on, that is basically awareness, is called a priming campaign. And the way you measure a priming campaign is different from the way you measure brand, and we'll get to brand in a second. But the first phase is priming. And priming is before people buy. So this is pre-buy. Before people buy, the first impression that they're going to have and all of those things, these are the things that you work into the priming. And you want the priming to just give you awareness among people, among the target audience, or among the ideal clients that you want to have. So that is the essence of priming. And priming makes use of all kinds of things. You can have TV ads, for example, is a good example of priming, because there's really no CTA, and there are lots of things. It's just for you to get the wild reach of people. So that's what priming is all about. You are priming people to choose you. So you are giving them, a pre-reason, maybe before you launch and all those things. All those campaigns that people do before they launch a particular product and things like that. All those are classified as priming. They are not branding at all. So just know that at the back of your mind. Now, how do you measure priming? And this is important. How do you measure priming? You measure priming by impressions, you measure priming by views, you measure priming by reach. How many people did it reach? How many views did it have? How many impressions did it get? That is how you actually measure a priming campaign. So that is very, very different from the rest of the others, which is the remaining two that I'm going to share with you shortly. But you have to understand that if you run a priming campaign, this is the way you're going to have it measured. And you are not going to get a financial measurement from priming. And priming is important, by the way. That doesn't mean it's not important, because people don't just wake up to choose whatever product or whatever service you have. You have to really prime people for it. You have to give them the psychological motions for them to choose you. So that is super, super important. But you must have it at the back of your mind. If you are doing priming, you know that you're doing priming, and the goal is for impressions, the goal is for views, the goal is for reach, and that is the way you are going to measure that priming. So if you have a budget for priming, you know that this is going into priming. We are giving people a psychological boost. We are giving people a emotional reason to choose us that has nothing to do with the product or the service or the CTA or anything like that. And that's what priming is all about. You're priming people maybe for something you are yet to release, but you're priming people for it. So let's go to the next one. Phase 2 is marketing. And this is very, very important also, because priming is pre-buy. That's what they see before they buy. That's what they see before an offer. That's priming. That's introduction. That's awareness. Marketing is strictly an offer. Is an offer. If it doesn't have a CTA, it's not marketing. And this is another mistake I see a lot of brands and businesses make, is that they do all these things and then they try to just umbrella everything under the name marketing. If it doesn't have a CTA, it's not marketing. If it doesn't have a clear offer, it's not marketing. And the goal of marketing is to get people to buy. That's it. Get people to buy. And that's the goal of marketing. The goal of priming is to make people aware, is to get the largest reach as possible. The goal of marketing is to get people to buy. That's the simple goal. Anything else is a distraction. And so you have to understand, when you have a priming budget, that's different from a marketing budget. And by the way, if you're really serious, you should have a budget, separate budget for these 3 phases. So the first one is priming, the second one is marketing, and marketing is strictly let's buy. What gets people to buy, whether it's an offer, whether it's a discount offer, whether it's a urgency offer, and things like that. So marketing is strictly getting people to buy, and it always includes an offer. It always includes a kind of CTA. So how do you measure marketing? It's very, very simple. You measure it by sales, you measure it by pre-orders, you measure it by opt-ins. That's people putting their email, and then they can get correspondence from you. And you measure it by upsells, and you measure it by cross sales. Now, upsells is when they buy something and then you try to upgrade them, or you give them the option of upgrading and then they take it. That's an upsell. That's marketing, connected to marketing. Cross sales, on the other hand, is instead of upgrading, you give them other options that they can choose from. Okay, they've made the choice, and this is one of the ways why a lot of brands leave money on the table. Just because someone has made a choice doesn't mean that that's the choice they want to make. So after they made a choice, you can just explain the other options and explain what it would take to move from this choice that they made to something slightly better. And you'll be surprised that lots of people might want to, move and change the choice that they made just because they got a little bit informed. So that is what cross sales is all about. But all of that is marketing. All of that is connected to marketing, which is also connected to sales, as you can see. That's where sales fall under. So when you have marketing, you have it closely connected to sales. Priming, on the other hand, is not connected to sales. Marketing is connected to sales. So let's go to phase 3, which is branding. Now, if priming is pre-buy, before they buy, and marketing is buy, branding is post-buy. And this is very important. Post-buy means that after they have bought, what now? After they have bought, what next? After they have bought, what is going on? What is going to be the experience of the customer? And branding is actually an experience, because it's an experience campaign. And what you want, branding begins the moment the customer or the client pays for the product or pays for the service. That's where branding actually begins. So if you say you have a branding budget, are you spending it on priming and marketing and even neglecting what branding is itself? So branding is simply, if priming is pre-buy, awareness, and marketing is offer, getting people to buy, branding is the reason you give the people that bought to come back to buy. That is what branding is about, and it's mostly an experience. That is the experience from the moment they pay. From the moment the client pays, that is where the branding campaign actually begins. And the branding is what determines whether the customer comes back or the customer vows never to come back, or writes a nasty review or writes a great review. all of that begins after the customer buys. So that is really what branding is about. I love a quote I saw on the internet recently, and it says that luxury is not a price point, luxury is an experience. And that, although that speaks to luxury, because branding is mostly associated with luxury products. They spend a lot of money on branding, and they spend a lot of effort, a lot of training, and all those things on branding, because they know that branding actually begins from the first purchase of the customer. That's where branding begins. And the goal of branding is to get the customer to come back to buy again. And how do you measure branding? It's very simple. You measure it by retention, you measure it by referrals, and you measure it by customer loyalty. So if you don't have a way to measure retention and you are spending money on branding, you are just pissing money in the wind. The same thing, referrals. Do you have a way to measure it, or you're just pissing money in the wind? Third thing, loyalty, customer loyalty. Is there a structure for customer loyalty, or are you just pissing money in the wind? So customer loyalty can be rewarded, can be structured in different kind of ways. One of the most popular ways is loyalty points, which is financially measurable. Referrals also is financially measurable, and retention is also measurable. You can tell retention. If you don't want to look at the financial parts, you can start looking at retention from what we call a churn rate, and that is the rate at which people opt out of a service, or people opt out of whatever it is that you are producing for them, and they just want to get out of your ecosystem. And these are the three core ways that you use to measure branding. So if you don't have a way of measuring any of these three, and you're spending money on branding, you are actually doing yourself a disservice, because what you're spending money on will not be measured. And if you're spending money on priming instead of marketing, you are doing the wrong thing. And it's important for a business to know which one is right for them and which one is the right decision at a particular time. So for example, if there's a product that has a very high retention rate, but the revenue is not high, that a lot of people don't know about it, so you spend money on priming. And if you have a lot of awareness but you're not converting that much, you spend money on marketing and sales. And then if you have a lot of people coming in, or have a lot of first-time buyers, but people are not returning to buy, and your churn rate is very high, then you have a problem with branding, and that's where you spend money. So in conclusion, you measure brand ROI with retention. This is the way to go. You measure brand ROI with retention. Why is it that we say that Apple has a very big brand, or Apple has one of the biggest brands in the world? It's because the moment you get one Apple product, it becomes easier to get sucked into the ecosystem and buy another Apple product and another Apple product, and then you subscribe to the service, and then you are just entranced in their world. So they have a very high retention. That's why we say that their brand is profitable. That's why we say that they have a big brand. That's the reason, because they have a very, very high retention. If the retention drops, then the brand becomes the brand is no longer worth what it's worth, and the value of it is going to drop. So when you're talking about the value of a brand, think in terms of retention. And retention is a combination of three things. And that is customer happiness, which is experience, which begins from the first purchase of the customer or the client. Customer happiness, reimagine need. And this is important, because there are some products, or there are some services you buy once and you really don't need them anymore. So what makes them come back? Is there a reimagined need for the product or service? Now, if there is none, there's no need to force it. And I see a lot of companies who are trying to create demand artificially for their products or services, and those things backfire in the long run. So is there a reimagined need? If there is no reimagined need for a particular product or service, find the need that is reimagined and make a product or make a service for it. And then the third one is product or service quality. Now, this one is the most important, because if your product or service sucks, there is no way that you can have any kind of retention. So that is actually part of branding, having a good product and having a service quality. Or you can even do something much more interesting, which is have a return policy. For example, a very good return policy is branding. A very good return policy is branding, because that indirectly correlates to customer happiness. And then even if your product quality is not that high, the very good return policy, easy return policy, makes the customer happiness increase, such that it covers up for it, and you can always send them another product that's much, much better. So this is the way it works. Brand ROI is equal to retention. Never, ever, ever forget that. I hope this was helpful. Like and subscribe if you love it. Drop a comment if you have a question, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.